Hey, what's up, everybody? Chris here, and it's time for a movie review. I've waited a long time for this movie, like a lot of people have, but finally we've got the follow up to 2009's Avatar with Avatar: The Way of Water. Going into this, I wouldn't say that I was skeptical because how can you bet against James Cameron? He always does a great job with sequels, bigger, better in terms of action, spectacle, plot, all that. And I'm going to try to be as spoiler free as I can here because I think a lot of people who are going to watch this have not yet seen the movie and they want to just try and get a sense of, whether or not it's worth their time. I can just say up front, if you don't want to watch the entire review, that it is worth your time. It's just a great movie that you have to see on a big screen. Now, I will say I did not see this in 3D. My wife went with me. It's about a 3 hour and 12-minute long movie. And so that's kind of pushing it, in terms of what she typically likes in the theater. But she definitely does not like 3D. I wanted her to see it with me. And so we saw it in sort of the standard projection format. But it was still a fantastic experience. And up front, I'll say, I think it's at least as good as the original, if not a little bit better. And there's a few reasons for that. So let's dive right into it. Hey, as always, if you're enjoying the content, please be sure to give this video a thumbs up. Please also be sure to subscribe. We're working towards 1,000 subscribers. That's my goal as we move into 2023. So hopefully we'll get there. But I appreciate your viewership and your support. So I was going to put together some movie notes to go through here, but I think that would make me venture into spoiler territory. And again, I'm trying to avoid that. So I'll just sort of, in a roundabout way, talk a little bit about the plot and what I like about this movie. It's not perfect, I don't think, and mainly because there are a lot of similar story beats to what we get with the first film, but there's enough here to differentiate it and to sort of prove, yet again, that Cameron is just great when it comes to sequels, just flat out. I think there's no debate about that at this point. There shouldn't have been going into this, I don't think, but you think about Aliens, you think about Terminator 2, in my opinion, both of those movies are at least as good as their original counterparts, if not better in a lot of ways, and I think that holds true here with The Way of Water. There's just so much about it from a spectacle perspective that's just kind of jaw-dropping and unbelievable, especially the way water is used here. I mean, you can sort of assume based on the title that that's going to be a big part of this movie, and it absolutely is. But some of the set pieces, the action you get, especially in the final third of this film, are just kind of mind-blowing, honestly. And you can just tell how much care, how much love was poured into this by James Cameron. He wanted to make this something that would be a completely memorable movie-going experience, and it absolutely is. I mentioned just a moment ago how I think you absolutely have to see this on the big screen or you're doing yourself a disservice. That statement holds true. That was the same, I think, for the original movie. If you didn't see that in the theater, you kind of missed out on a lot of what was so great about that as a theater experience. That's true here as well. The plot, too, I think is a little bit better. It's interesting, right from the beginning of this movie, we sort of dive back into Pandora. There's not a whole lot of setup, and there's sort of this assumption that the audience knows, pretty thoroughly what happened in the first film. But there's some clever explanations about how certain characters reemerge here. And again, I'm trying not to get into spoiler territory, but if you've looked at any of the information on IMDb, looked at the cast list, you kind of have a sense of some things that might be going on. I think it's really well handled here. One of the things that's kind of interesting, though, is in the first movie, the whole thing was about this mineral that was on Pandora that was called unobtainium, I believe, something like that. It was just sort of a cash grab type of thing where, of course, humans being humans, they're going there to get this for money. Natives be damned, right? Who cares about those? We just want to get this mineral and sort of go on. Now they're coming back many years later, and Jake and Neytiri have had time to grow a family and raise a family. So things have changed in his situation quite a lot. But humans now, and it's stated early on in the film, so I wouldn't say this is really a spoiler, but humans now are sort of observing, of course, that Earth is dying. They got to leave Earth. They're tired of messing around with the natives on Pandora. They're just going to push them out of the way and take the planet. Like, flat out, forget the mineral thing. That's what they're there for. There is another substance in this movie that they're sort of going after. This, I wouldn't say it's a MacGuffin or anything, but it just, kind of underscores sort of the nature of human beings and how repugnant we can be as a species. That's part of, what's going on, and that's part of what drives a lot of the commentary in this movie, as was the case with the first movie. But that's sort of the setup here. There are a lot of nods to other movies here, too, which I thought was kind of interesting, specifically the movie Jaws. I'm not, again, going to dive into too many specifics with that, but as you're watching it, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about, especially as, the plot moves forward in the second half of the movie. But again, I think just from a sheer spectacle point of view, it's just a great thing that James Cameron has put together here. Something you have to see in a theater. Again, Erica, my wife, was a little bit hesitant to go in and see it. I mean, she liked the first movie. She didn't love it. She enjoyed it, but she was thinking, 3 hours of, kind of the same thing, really pretty visuals, but maybe not a whole lot of plot. The plot is better here. Again, I wouldn't say that it's flawless, but I think it does up the emotional stakes very thoroughly. This movie has a lot more kind of oomph and impact, I would say, than the original movie did, which is not necessarily the highest bar in the world to clear, but it does a good job, or Cameron does a good job of taking things up a notch. But by the end of this movie, I think, just to sort of put this in kind of a subjective point of view, my wife was totally invested in it. I mean, she was loving it. She was really all into everything that was happening. So even though it is a longer film-going experience, it, in my opinion, goes by pretty quickly. And again, some of the characters here get a lot more to them in terms of being rounded characters, right? So we have a lot of three-dimensional characters here. I think more so than we had in the original movie, actually. It kind of ups the stakes there a little bit. And I wouldn't say this is like leaps and bounds better than the first movie, but it definitely amps things up. And it sets up some really interesting things for the third film also, which is inevitably coming. I think that was actually filmed at the same time this one was, so I think it's, being edited at this point, and we should get it a lot more quickly than the wait we had between the original film and Avatar: The Way of Water here. So clearly Cameron's got a plan, and I think, should everything go according to that plan, we're looking at like 5 or 6 movies, something like that. So who knows if that's actually going to happen, but that's kind of what he has in mind. The other thing that I really liked about this movie is the world building. So you get a lot of that with the original motion picture, of course, but here it's so much more detailed. I mean, there's so much more to it, which is kind of hard to believe, because I think Cameron did a great job with the original film in that regard, but here it's just a lot more depth. You get to see a whole other side of the planet and sort of the Na'vi that was not really explored in a whole lot of depth at all. It was kind of touched on briefly with some sequences toward the end of the original film. But of course, the title here being The Way of Water, you kind of know what that means. You're going to get to see a group of Na'vi who exist solely in the water and have adapted to live that way. And physiologically, they're adapted to that in some ways that the Pandorans, if I'm using that term correctly, in the first motion picture are not. So again, I mean, when you go down the list of what you want out of a sequel, this has really got it all. I think it's got a better plot. I think it's got better spectacle, better action. And the thing that I like about the action here is that it's got weight to it. It doesn't feel, even though this is a movie that relies, of course, almost entirely on CG, it doesn't feel light. It doesn't feel like something that's not concrete. Everything here has weight, and Cameron has a way of staging these things to make them work well. You've also got a lot of trademark Cameronisms here. You've seen some of the stuff in the trailer. There are a lot of sort of military situations, a lot of strobing yellow lights, a lot of sort of mech robotic equipment kind of stuff, the sort of things you've seen in Aliens and even in Titanic, that kind of stuff. That sort of thing is here too. But he does it so well that I don't really care. It just adds to the story and makes it that much better of an action movie. So this is absolutely worth going to see. There's no doubt about that. If you like the original movie, you're going to like this one. There's a lot to love here. If you've seen it, let me know what you think in the comments down below. I'm highly impressed with this. I did my best movies of 2022 list recently, and I had not yet seen this, of course. And while I think this is sort of teasing the line of sort of making that top 5 that I put together, I don't know if it quite clears that hurdle, but it's close. It's a great movie, a great experience in the theater. So anyway, let me know what you think about it down in the comments below, and let's have a discussion.